After 2 agonizing weeks of no Overwatch League, we're back with a new meta. We have Junker Queen, Genji or Echo, Asher Sojourn, Brig, and Lucio. Who will come out on top? I have no fucking idea, but let's make some predictions anyway. For our first match, we have Mayhem versus London. This one's going to be a banger. Both times these teams have gone head-to-head. It's been a 5-map banger, with London going up 2 maps, then Florida going up 2 maps, then map 5 goes either way. I think the trend continues here, but who wins? It's about even, but I'm going to go with Mayhem in the end. Mayhem have historically been able to figure out London as the match goes on. I also think Mayhem tends to have strong starts, and that London won't necessarily look as good in this meta. One reason is that I think Backbone's Genji is pretty awful, I'll just say it. Don't get me wrong, he has a good May and Zen, but we haven't seen his Echo, and his Genji is really bad. They've historically not run him on it. I foresee them trying to force Backbone on May, but there's just too many ways to negate May in this meta. Lucio boot, Brig whip shot, and the 2 speed boosts. I just don't think Sparker is that much better than XC that he can negate Checkmate's impact. Landon does have a good Brig and will diff Majid or RuPaul on it most likely, but I'll give it to Mayhem in a very close 3-2. This is very much a toss-up. Next up, we have New York versus the Houston Outlaws. This one's pretty exciting actually. New York picked up Ansoon J, and I believe New York has said his debut game will be tomorrow as well, but I think his impact will be felt. I don't think he's amazing or anything, but he was very solid in contenders, and his Lucio and Gangnam Jun's Brig should be a somewhat decent support line. I just think Houston are just looking real strong right now. This is pretty much the Houston DPS's perfect meta. Pelican on the Genji or Echo and Merit on the Sojourn Ash, actually fucking massive. I don't know that I trust Piggy or Dante, especially in the Junker Queen. Maybe Doge is cracked on it. But as long as they don't totally throw, I think they have a strong DPS and support lines. I give it to Houston 3-2, because they're just like that. Next up, Los Angeles Gladiators versus the Dallas Fuel. This is the 4th meeting between these teams, with Glaz being favored 2-1 with a 9-4 record in maps. Pretty one-sided, but can Dallas pull off the upset? I'm going to say no. I do worry about Dallas in this meta. In theory, it should be great for them. Rush-S comp, Sparkle can on the Genji, Chio is back on the main support picks. What can go wrong? For one, Glad it's like way too good in this meta. They pound on every variation of it, and they can play pretty much everything to a high level at this point. I have full faith in Reiner to pick up Junker Queen, and obviously Funny Ass or Skewed on the Lucio Brig backline will go hard. The other reason is that, yet again, Sojourn is maybe the most important character, and Gurio will be perma-starting. I think he gets too much hate, but he is objectively pretty bottom tier. I don't think he can do anything to Kev, Patty, or Ons, whichever one perma-starts in this meta. I give it to Glaz in a sweep. Next up, we have the Boston Uprising taking on the Atlanta Reign. Boston took these guys to map 5 maps last time they played. Can they play them close again? I think they can, to an extent. I think Steaker will make his debut here, but I think Kai is just going to come out and destroy. I think individually, Atlanta simply outplays Boston in every position, unless Valentine gets good again. But I think Boston will surprise people. Punk, Valentine, and Faith are great in this meta, and I'm excited to see what Sacred can do. But I'm going to give this one to Atlanta 3-1, with Boston taking a funny map. Next is San Francisco Shock versus the Washington Justice. If you're really ballsy, then you could pred Justice here. Happy's on the Sojourn, Assassin or Decay on the Genji, Justice have the Scrimbucks. Am I ballsy like that? Fuck no. I'm not trusting the Justice ever a fucking gun. Fuck that team. Shock are still top tier in this meta. Cluj can probably pick up Junker Queen. I see Kilo running Astra Sojourn, getting a ton of value out of them. And proper on Genji? Sign me up. Justice will perform better this stage than last, but I still think Shock take a 3-1 as they move closer to the regular season wins record. Next up, we have the Toronto Defiant taking on the Titans. I think this will be close. Titans have Scrimbucks, the ultimate decider and ruiner of Preds. Can they win the Canadian Derby? I'll say no, but it'll be close. I think King is going to be really good to them. His Genji is great, and Aspire showed promise on the Sojourn. I think Mesa works better in rush comps than dive comps, but ultimately I do think Toronto look pretty scary right now. Heath is quietly one of the best Sojourns in the region, and now that Ash is a viable pick again, the Heath will continue to be least. Hotpa should be a great Junker Queen. Chorong is great Lucio, and Twilight has a really underrated Brig. The only real issue I have with them is that Flex DPS could be a weakness, but I think all should be able to contend with King off the Tracer. I give it to Toronto 3-1 with the power of Scrimbucks taking a map. Next up, we have the Boston Uprising taking on the London Spitfire. This is an exciting match. I think these two are much closer skill levels than people think. Again, I do think this meta helps Boston and hurts London. You know what? Fuck it. We're bound to have an upset this week. Boston are on the upswing. London phase 2, likely 3 tough losses. I give it to Boston 3 in a 3-2 thriller. Punk comes out strong in the Junker Queen. Valentine dips Backbone. I can see it all. Next up, Justice versus Paris. I have zero faith in Paris. They look god-awful. They ended the last stage getting swept by Atlanta without winning a single point. Meanwhile, Justice are still a somewhat strong team, and they have Scrimbucks backing them up. Give it to them in the sweep. I don't have faith in Paris to make it close. Except Houston versus Glads. Well, I think Glads aren't as good at this meta as usual. I don't think they have elite Genjis or Sojourns, but they are up definitely at the top. So they've swept Houston 3 times now. They'll make it a 3rd time here. Next up, Vancouver Titans against the Paris Eternal. Again, zero faith in Paris. Nothing about this meta seems promising for them. Their coordination is shabby. They're just a mess. Meanwhile, Titans are on the uptick, with promising scrim results and a new flex CPS. I give to Titans in a stomp. The power scrim bucks will be unleashed full force on Paris this week. Next up, we get the Mayhem taking on the San Francisco Shock. Again, I think the Shock just look very good right now. Unless they somehow fumble hard or Finn is a bad brig, they should go as 2-0 this week. I have Mayhem taking a map, but Shock take the series 3-1. Next up, New York versus Dallas Fuel. Fuel have had it rough recently, and while I think things are looking up for New York, I still think Fuel should take this at least. Grillo has been performing better than Florida. I trust Hanvin Fearless more than Kalan or Junker Queen. Gio is way better than Ansoon J, and I trust Fielder on the brig. I want to say 3-1 though, with New York taking another funny map. I think they can take it close, just off the power of Yaki's Genji again. Next up, Toronto versus Atlanta. This one could be a banger. Atlanta look very strong still, however Toronto could be on the upswing in this promising new meta. However, I don't have too much faith in Toronto here. While I think the supports are slightly in favor of Toronto, I think Hawkeye and Nero DPS stiff them too hard. But Toronto do drop to spaghetti pretty heavily sometimes. They went to 5 maps against Boston when they had no right to. So I'm going to say Toronto's momentum uptick lets them go to 5, but they fumble. That's it for this week. Thoughts, what are your preds looking like? Thanks for watching. Remember to hit like and subscribe for more. I upload nearly daily Overwatch League content. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subs by the end of Season 5. 20 subscription helps greatly. Thanks.